All right, everyone. So we will go ahead and get started. My name is Erin Ahart. I am one of two career counselors here in the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. We're so excited to welcome you today for Managing Job Search Anxiety. Today, I'm joined by our three amazing panelists, Rachel Krell, Karen Bryant, and Marcos Interiano. It's so great to have you all here. And our colleagues from the Trachtenberg School, Milken Institute, School of Public Health, School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, as this workshop is presented to you in partnership across four different schools, including the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences. So a special thank you to Denise Fowler, Jessica Palermo, and Toy Drain for their support in this collaboration. I'm also joined here by my colleague, Dr. Johnette Ruffner-Caesar, who is the other career counselor here in the Columbian College of Arts and Sciences, serving graduate students, and she will be leading our panel discussion today. So I want to turn it over to Johnette to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. So very happy that you are here for this very important conversation. And really excited about our panel today. I think we have all experienced some level of anxiety as we go through the job search or just the career journey. And so really happy that you all are here to participate in the conversation.
Great. Yes, we're so happy that you all are here. And to kick us off, I want to start off by sharing what you can expect from this conversation today. So first, we'll have Rashonda Riley from CAPS, who will go over some general anxiety management techniques. Really excited for her presentation. You will then hear from Dr. Ruffner-Caesar again as she leads our panel discussion, and you'll hear from our wonderful panelists, all who come with a diverse range of professional experiences and who they themselves have all experienced job search anxiety or stress in some way or another. And finally, you'll also have the chance to ask our panelists and Rashonda any questions that come up today for you throughout our conversation in the question and answer portion of this workshop. And before we get into our program, I also want to recognize some of the reasons why you all may be here with us today. Some of the reasons why job search anxiety is so prevalent, especially now in 2024. The nature of job searching is already stressful, especially now that we have online applications. AI only, adds to that. In the old days, just 2 decades ago, maybe you learned about a job through a newspaper ad, a job board. Maybe you heard about postings through coworkers, friends, family, and neighbors. Well, now it doesn't really work that way anymore, and you have a lot more jobs to apply to. You also have a lot more qualified competition. But even without considering the pressures that today brings, job searching was already stressful anyway. You might be feeling like you're not good enough. You could be struggling with imposter syndrome. Maybe you worry about not getting a job in your field or a job that others approve of. Maybe you worry about not making enough money to support yourself or your family or other dependents. Maybe you have just a general period of uncertainty going on in your life right now, navigating other personal challenges or barriers that are only compounding on top of this stress. And there are other reasons for anxiety too. Interview anxiety, fear of relocating, fear of leaving your current position, negotiating a job offer, starting a new job, maybe just navigating all of the many steps that is now a part of the hiring and job search, job application process. But whatever it is, my reason for listing all of these reasons why you might be experiencing anxiety is not to give you more anxiety or overwhelm you more. It's to validate all of these feelings that you might be experiencing right now and let you know that you are not alone, which is the reason for this workshop today. This is a repeated workshop because it is in such high demand. We know that people want more education around job search anxiety. So, this session, I want you all to know it's really your time. Of course, you might be coming here for a variety of reasons. And so throughout this presentation today, we want you to think of your questions or anything that you want our panelists or Rashonda to speak a little bit more on and write those questions or just comments, concerns in the chat. And then once we get to the question and answer portion, we'll make sure that we address those. If you have a question or something comes up that you feel uncomfortable putting in the chat, please just send me a message directly and I will share your question or comment anonymously so that way your name is not shared with the group. This will be a really informal, really open conversation. And again, we want to make sure that we are all here to serve you. And so with that, I'm really excited for our program today, and I will turn it over to Rashonda Riley, who is the Assistant Director of Counseling Outreach at CAPS.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you everybody else for being here. And I will share my screen. And then please let me know if we can't see it for any reason. All right. Can everybody see that? Perfect. So like Erin said, my name is Rashonda Riley. I serve as the Assistant Director of Outreach in our Counseling and Psychological Services Department, or CAPS as we like to call it for short. And I think like Erin said, it's a very light presentation. And so we'll kind of keep track of time, but hopefully we'll kind of get to all the good pieces of that as well. And so just to kind of like center us a little bit, just to kind of give a brief overview of CAPS if you're not familiar with it or just maybe need a refresher. So we're located here on the Foggy Bottom campus in the Mount Vernon campus, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5. The things that we always really want to highlight for all of our students, faculty, and staff is that Monday through Friday from 12 to 4 p.m., any student can always walk in and be seen by a counselor for like a 30-minute session. And that can range from anywhere between like, I just have this one issue that I want to talk about, or I'm wanting to kind of get connected to a therapist at CAPS or like long-term. And so those are all various like avenues to kind of like getting connected to support at CAPS as well. We have kind of a wide range of services, but I think like the four branches of that is that we offer, brief individual counseling. We have group therapy. We have a group therapy space that is dedicated just to graduate students as well, that will rerun again in the springtime. We offer like various support spaces and then various workshops, kind of like how you are here today. And like I said, there's three main areas in which you can kind of access support, whether that's through like our same day time, or you can access timely care, or of course, like if anything ever comes up, we're available 24 hours, 7 days a week for any kind of like crises support. And then of course, all services at CAPS are 100% free. There's no additional cost unless that's like medical or psychiatry based as well. And then of course, like we talked about, like Timely Care, which is a 24/7 virtual platform. The big thing is that all of our students have access to 9 free sessions throughout the entire academic year. So for any reason, it's just, I think about sometimes like being a grad student and like the 9 to 5 is like not necessarily like you're working, you're in school. So Timely Care can be like a really great option for you getting mental health care free to you as a student that's a little bit more readily accessible than at, your typical kind of university counseling center. All right, that was my brief CAPS overview. And I think like Erin said, like just trying to understand a little bit about like job search anxiety and like, what is that? Is it different from traditional anxiety? So just kind of like to root us in that. Job search anxiety really just refers to like the stress and the apprehension that we experience when we're just seeking employment, right? And so the effects of that are no different from like generalized anxiety or any other type of stress that we feel. But this particular type of anxiety really just stems from sometimes the pressures or the uncertainties that we have when it comes to just like job hunting in general, right? So maybe there's like a fear of rejection or a lack of control over the outcomes. And that is why like today we're going to talk a little bit about like a growth mindset, because I think sometimes when we think about like the job search or just anxiety in general, we can kind of be really rooted and really stuck in the fact that like, I don't know what I can do and what's like in my control. And so today we're going to talk about a couple tips that could really help you stay on track with the job search journey, but hopefully kind of decreases some of that anxiety that we all experience as well. Some of those common causes I think will not be unique, and I think some of our panelists may touch on these too. But I think some of the bigger ones are just like fear of rejection, right? So not being selected, or maybe we've received negative feedback, or just feedback in general, right? Can kind of heighten us a little bit. Like we talked about, just like the unpredictability. So just like the lack of control. Job market is like any other market that we're kind of dealing with. Sometimes it's like a really great time to apply for a job. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes we're talking about those things like when's the right time to apply? When are certain companies looking? And so I think all of that can be like really anxiety producing as well. I think like in any job market, there's always like the comparison of our peers, right? People are maybe getting jobs quicker. We're in the same field. We're starting to feel like maybe there's like too many of us looking at the same job. And so I think like the comparison sometimes can come up. Obviously, just like the financial pressure, right? Like you're finishing school, you need a job, you have to pay bills. So I think like the urgency of the job search can kind of also create some uncertainty in that, right? And just like the ambiguity of like what happens next, right? Like after we finish school, we've decided to attain a higher degree of education. Was this a good idea? Like what comes out of that? And so I think some of those can be some of the major common causes of job search anxiety. Some of the symptoms, like I said, are no different than what we would experience with any other type of generalized anxiety. But I think a lot of that can just be like the constant analyzing or like second guessing our decisions. Some of those things could just be procrastination, right? Like when we feel really overwhelmed or we feel like there's too many things that we have to do at the job search. I think that's when we can kind of get really frozen in time. And then we don't want to start kind of like engaging in the job search process again. And so we can kind of not only procrastinate, but kind of really be frozen in that time. I think for many people, we have like a physical response to stress and anxiety. And so that can, again, we can engage in like trouble sleeping. Increased heart rate is also associated with anxiety. Just stress related physical symptoms. That could be sweating. That could be like lack of eating. It kind of can range, but I think we can all experience those pieces in that as well. I think like we alluded to, right? Job search anxiety or just anxiety around like looking for a job or a next stage in life is extremely prevalent. So a study revealed in 2024, 80% of college students are concerned about securing employment after graduation. And so just kind of wanting to root us in that like job searching is a skill that develops over time, right? And so we can teach techniques, we can talk about strategies that kind of support in that. We have career development and all of these things. But like anything in life, like once we start to go through the motions, we start to kind of build up a lot of the pieces to that as well. And I think that can sometimes ground us in a better way, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about just like the growth mindset in general. And so if you're not familiar with growth mindset, I always tell people this is not silver lining a situation, right? This isn't kind of like pretending like everything is great when everything is not great, right? Because we still want to acknowledge that this is a process that can be anxiety producing. It can sometimes make us feel really sad in it. And so those are still real emotions that we want people to really recognize for themselves and really say like, I am feeling really stressed. This is really difficult. But after that, we don't want you to stay in that place of just recognizing emotions. It's like, what do I do with the emotions now that I have recognized them? And so sometimes like the growth mindset can really help us. And so what is a growth mindset, right? That is just strictly the belief that abilities, intelligence, skills can all be developed and improved over time, right? So in kind of layman's term, it is the idea that we are learning and that we are growing constantly, right? And that doesn't stop. So every time we take on a new task or we have a new opportunity or we've done something that we've never done before, we want to take on the approach that like we're growing and we're learning and we have the ability to grow in that task. And so some of those like key characteristics in that mindset will be just ideally like embracing challenges, right? Like how we see opportunities or how we see difficulties as opportunities for us to learn and grow, rather than sometimes, the way that sometimes the human mind can think, right? Which is that we're never going to overcome something. This is also where we think about like values, right? Where like we value the effort that we're putting into something. I know sometimes like we can say like, well, I wanted to fill out 5 applications this week, but I only got to 2. So that means I'm behind. That means I'm failing at it. When we really want to turn the mindset around and really say like, it was great. Like you accomplished at least 1 application. Could we do more? Yes. Could we do less than that? Absolutely. But really trying to say like your effort and your value and your time that you're putting into these things should not get lost in kind of like the stress and anxiety of managing that as well. How we view constructive criticism to improve rather than sometimes being defeated, or just feedback in general, right? Like whether that is again from anyone in our world, or we ask people to review our resume or our cover letter, or we ask for feedback from a job, valuing all of those pieces as like a way for improvement versus kind of like a reflection that you personally are doing something wrong. And a growth mindset also just like allows us to view failures, right, as like a normal part of the learning process, right? Really thinking about it as like, no, we don't want all of our failures to be a part of the learning process, but that's just the reality sometimes of our situations, that like once we've done something and we haven't always done it right, like we've learned how to improve that better and we've really improved on a skill. And so growth mindset really asks us to think a lot about how we have improved on things before, right? And so ideally, why would we want to use that in a job search, or why am I talking about it today? Right? It's been proven that it kind of reduces fear of failure, right? So many students feel anxious about just the rejection of the job search, right? And so really taking that and reframing that for ourselves and say, like, that can be a part of a natural skill set that I'm learning, right? Never done this before. I've never applied for a job at this company before, right? And so really trying to build some resilience and just kind of like thinking about how we refine our skill set. Another thing is that it fosters adaptability, right? I think in the job search, or just kind of like the next stages in life after graduation, a lot of times this is a way in which life is just unpredictable at its finest hour, right? And so really being okay with the fact that like things are changing and I can adapt to those things kind of allows us to just remain open to like new possibilities. Sometimes that first job, or even sometimes the third job that we're looking for, we're still not there, right? We still haven't gotten to the place that we want to be in our careers. And so really thinking about how we want to remain open to the possibilities and that we're okay with kind of changing in those things too. The other thing is that it just improves your overall mental health, which is why we're talking about it today, right? So often job search anxiety is sometimes tied to our self-doubt, or just like we take it very personal. And so really just thinking about how, again, like this could be in a way for us to learn and share in like our personal like progress over perfection, right? Which sometimes we know we can kind of fall into those as well. So a couple just various like techniques, right? One of them is just like how we reframe challenges as an opportunity to learn. And so that is taking an approach, instead of viewing our rejections or our failures, challenging them as valuable learning experiences, like we talked about. And so an actionable tip, right? Like potentially after each interview, reflect on what went well, identify areas of improvement. And sometimes you can keep a journal or keep some kind of written record of those insights, right? So like we're tracking progress in those. Another one is just kind of, Another one is those embracing it as a process, right? So really acknowledging that the job search is a skill that we can improve on over time, right? Not all of us are great at networking. We've never networked before. And so really thinking about setting like small achievable goals, right? Whether those are like, I can apply for 3 jobs this week, or I at least want to connect with one person on LinkedIn, like whatever it is also reminding yourself to be really, to use the SMART goals, right? Like think about things that we can actually do and accomplish, versus sometimes I think like putting too much pressure on ourselves, where in any given week between school and life and our personal pieces, it might be impossible to apply for 10 jobs a week, right? Depending on the field, the things that a job application is requiring you to do. And so just being really kind of mindful of those pieces too. Focusing on effort and not just like outcomes. And so really thinking about how we place our value, again, like on effort, right? Versus solely the end result. What are you learning, right? What are you taking away from it? But sometimes even a reward system. And that could be, I'm going to buy myself a cookie after I apply for 5 jobs. It could be anything that makes you happy. I'm going to go on a walk after I apply for 5 jobs. I'm going to go and hang out with friends. So really just allowing yourself to just not reward like the outcome, but also rewarding the effort can be really helpful as well. And then just practicing some positive self-talk. And so that could look very differently for each one of us in the space, right? So that could be like how we write down positive affirmations. That could just be telling ourselves like positive things, right? Like, I am trying, I'm working hard, like I'm doing the best that I can. That could be just like doing meditation and journaling around positive self-talk. Could look like a range of things, but really just reminding yourself that like when self-doubt kind of creeps in, not to forget to remind yourself of the positive things that you have going on or the things that you have accomplished versus the things that you've kind of yet to accomplish in those ways as well. And then, like anything in life, is not linear, right? So like reminding yourself that with a growth mindset, like that our growth it ebbs and flows. Sometimes we're paused in our growth. Sometimes we're going at an alarming rate. It just really can kind of depend. And I think like when we reflect on our previous setbacks sometimes in life, this is where the resilience comes into play, where like we have had moments in our life in any setting where we've eventually had success in that, right? And so really thinking sometimes about the ways in which you have done a really great job at, or you have seen progress in, can be really helpful in those ways as well. And so just like a few additional tools to have in your toolbox, mindfulness and meditation can be really helpful when we're navigating through kind of stress and anxiety, exercise, adequate sleep, right? And then sometimes just like traditional like cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. And this is sometimes where, counseling or therapy can kind of come into play to kind of help you with those things, right? And so whether those could be anything, right? Whether you're a journaler and you feel really comfortable sometimes writing down your feelings and expressing yourself in that way. I always say like DC is a really great place where like sometimes we are always walking. And so even when we're doing walks, we can do them mindfully, right? Like focusing in on the sensations of our feet, how we're breathing, the environment around us. Those are things that like, if you feel like I never have time to do anything, you're always walking somewhere, right? And so even those moments, you can really take time to do deep breathing exercises or do mindful walks as well. And then some of those behavioral activation tools is really just thinking about how when we're feeling really overwhelmed and we're feeling really stuck on an assignment or on a job application, that sometimes we can take a break, right? It's breaking things down into smaller tasks, right? It's doing something that allows us to get lost in the moment. And so when we think about anxiety and we're feeling really anxious, when we start to kind of change those behaviors, we can really have kind of like a shift, not only in our mindset, but also how we're feeling and doing, right? Some people, again, like have those physical symptoms. And so the behavioral activation piece allows us to engage also in the physical pieces that are causing a lot of anxiety or stress, or for us to just not feel good. And so sometimes those can be really helpful to just realign us in a lot of ways. And that is it for me. I know I give like a super overload.
That was great. Thank you so much, Rashonda. I want to highlight the embrace the process slide. And I also loved what someone said in the chat. I think they said words are energy, those positive affirmations. So really love that. Thank you so much. And there was a lot shared on the slides too. So I want to remind our audience that this meeting is being recorded. So if you want to watch this whole entire presentation back, that is great. And you can also watch Rashonda's portion back too. So now I'm going to turn it over to Johnette to introduce our panel and kick off our panel discussion.
Great. Rashonda, thank you so much. I'm always reinvigorated by the information that you share because it can help us throughout our entire professional journey. So thank you. And thank you to our panelists so much for joining us. So I want to start off with introductions. We'll go in alpha order. First is Karen Bryant. Karen is a veteran educator with over 30 years experience serving teachers, students, and families in the public education system. She has been an English teacher at the middle and high school levels, an instructional specialist at the district level, and she most recently served as principal of a large suburban middle school in Maryland. Karen is now an equity advocate with a passion for exploring the concept of community, specifically how it creates shared culture and the ways in which that culture impacts the identity formation of minoritized populations and their subsequent ability to navigate public spaces and agency. We also have Marcos Intariano. Marcos currently serves as the Assistant Director of Registration and Records at GW Law School. He graduated from Salisbury University with a bachelor's in international business and a minor in information systems. He is working on a master's in education and human development and a graduate certificate in incorporating international perspectives in education K through 12. Now, his higher education calling came when he studied abroad in Costa Rica and the work he did as a student assistant at the registrar's office at Salisbury University. And finally, Rachel Krell. Rachel earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Strategic Communication with an emphasis in public relations and a minor in queer studies from Northern Arizona University. She then completed her Master of Education specializing in higher ed in student affairs at Salem State University. And with over 5 years of higher education experience, Rachel has supported students in various roles within Res Life, LGBTQ, student services, civic engagement, and first year experience. Rachel currently serves as a triage specialist for the Success Coaching Program in academic advising at Johns Hopkins University. So you all give a virtual welcome, clap your hands for our panelists. So you all have accomplished so much in your academic and professional career. And with all of those accomplishments, based on your bio, there are many transitions and adjustments that you've experienced to include new geographic location, work environment, new coursework, new friends, and dare I say, new identity, right? And the list kind of goes on. And I'm sure there have been many peaks and valleys as you've progressed. So what we'd like to ask you to do is to briefly share your professional journey by sharing a story about a time when you managed stress and anxiety related to your job search. I like to say opportunity search because it may not just be a job, it may be an opportunity, right? Or a work situation. And so I will allow you to unmute and choose who goes first within 30 seconds. If not, I will select who's going to go first. So the floor is open, panel.
Hi, folks. I'm happy to start. Thank you again, Erin and Johnette, for this opportunity. And I'm so pleased to see the folks on the line today. I'm going to share with you my experience for the opportunity search right out of grad school when I was searching for an English teacher position. Okay. At the time, English teachers were holding on to those jobs with 10 fingers and 10 toes, right? Holding on to those positions. And traditionally in the field of education, you get those ebbs and flow where, there's a shortage of teachers and then there's, too many, or there's a shortage in just one field or the other. So when I was coming out of grad school, really the shortage was in the area of special educators and ESOL teachers, right? And I went to grad school in the greater Washington, D.C. area, but I was an English teacher. And so what made me nervous was that I would not be able to find a position right away, just because the landscape at the time looked the way that it looked. And I know that when we were job searching, we're always taking a look at the landscape to see what we're up against. So what I did for myself, that did create a lot of anxiety for me. So what I did is I stepped back and I tapped into who I am. Okay, who are you, Karen? What do you have to bring to the table? And I really made sure that I understood my strengths, my passion, and what it is I love to do, where I would see myself. And as a result, that enabled me to get a little creative during the job search. So I actually approached some of, universities usually provide a job fair of some sort, and districts usually recruit at job fairs, especially for educators. Sometimes they'll have those specialties. But a lot of the districts that I was interested in weren't interviewing anyone other than special educators and ESOL folks, okay? And that wasn't me. So what I decided to do is to reach out to the head people anyway, and go to the job fair and go there anyway, let them know who I was, make that personal connection, because one of my strengths, I'm a professional people person, I engage. And when I engage with people, things happen. So I bring my full self to that moment, right? And so some of the larger, they'll remain nameless, but some of the larger districts around who are interviewing, I went and met the head person and said, hi, I realize that you're only offering interviews for, special educators and ESOL teachers, but I'm looking for an English position, and you'd be making a really big mistake if you did not offer me an interview. What? And that worked, actually. Every district that I approached who was not interviewing English teachers, I got an interview for, and I got an offer from. And so in the end, I had my opportunity to choose between districts where I was going to begin my career. And it all happened because I stepped back first, took inventory about who I was, and then took that creative leap, and put myself out there. And that paid off.
Beautiful, beautiful. I definitely want to come back to a couple of things that you said. The big one is confidence, but we'll put a pin there and we'll move to our next panelist.
I can jump in. So hi everyone. Again, I'm Rachel Krell. I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. And yeah, I can talk a little bit about this. This is very recent for me. I just graduated from my master's program in May, and I started this position at Johns Hopkins in July. So I was job searching for multiple months leading up to it. And yeah, there was a lot of stress and a lot of embarrassment also of not having a position coming from a cohort model in the graduate program. But one experience that stood out specifically was at Johns Hopkins. So for a little bit of context, I had moved from Arizona to Massachusetts for my graduate program. I didn't know anyone out there. And I had convinced myself I did not want to do another big move. I want to stay in Massachusetts, but I heard about an incredible opportunity at Hopkins. It was my dream position. So I was like, okay, I could come around to the idea of moving to Maryland. So I was going through the interview process. This job was, again, exactly what I wanted. It was the type of work I'd been doing in grad school and wanted to continue doing. And the process had gone great. And everyone tells you not to do this, but I really put all my eggs in that basket because it felt like it was going really well. And so I had come to visit campus because in my mind, if I was going to get a job offer, I wanted to see the campus and like where I would potentially live. So I was in Maryland on the Hopkins campus and they called me. I thought that it was going to be the job offer and it was a rejection. So I was literally in Maryland, did not have the job, had no reason to really be there. And coming off of that, one of my mentors told me to just like be sad about it because I'm the kind of person that when things happen, I'm like, okay, that sucked. Let's go to the next. Like I started applying for jobs like in that moment. It was like, okay, time to do the next thing. But it's like taking the time to like fully acknowledge the process, like Rashonda was talking about, like taking the time to just like be sad about it. So I let myself be sad for a few days, gave myself a deadline so it didn't go on forever. But then I just like got back into it. It was like, okay, that didn't work. Time to apply for other jobs. And it ended up working out actually that because I had made those connections and had really like had a great interview process, they reached back out to me a few months later and actually asked me to apply for this position. It was a new position. They were looking for someone to kind of like create the role and they thought it would be a good fit. So went through the interview process and here I am. So it was also just a really good reminder that first of all, you're always interviewing and always seeking out opportunities, even when you don't think that you are. But two, that I was going to end up in the right place because looking back, now that I work very closely with people in that role, I would not have been happy. And I'm very happy in my role right now. So yeah, things worked out how they were supposed to. And it was just a good reminder to, yeah, trust the process and really like be present and just go through the roller coaster of it.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. So the points that I'm picking up are be sad, but not forever. Feel what you feel, but not forever. And to always keep a positive attitude and understand that it takes time to get to where you're going. So thank you. All right, Marcos.
And Janet, thank you so much for having us. As a first generation college graduate, I think there's a lot of pressure that I felt as being the first one out of my family. And I probably have many stories to tell, but let me try to keep it simple and straightforward. Um, I'll be speaking about my whole experience overall. So graduated from Salisbury University, and unfortunately, it took me about a year and something to get my first job. So it took a while. During that time, obviously, the overthinking, the fear of rejection was part of it, not knowing how to navigate it on my own. Yes, I do suggest that students reach out to the career services that all universities offer. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of those who thought about it. I was a student who just wanted to graduate and start working. I thought I was going to start working in business. However, my calling was in higher education. And I think looking back, I realized that it started back in Costa Rica and during the time at Salisbury. And so it took me about a year and something to finally land a job. My first job was here at GW, and now I have 5 years at GW in different capacities, from student services to registration, to support. And honestly, over the years, I've learned a lot when it comes to applying for jobs. Yes, there are jobs that I've had where I've lasted over a year or so, and then there's jobs, unfortunately, that even though I enjoyed, had to move away from. And during that time, I did notice one thing, and I think that is networking. It's always great to network. It's not easy for certain of us, especially for those who struggle and have anxiety. I have anxiety overall, and looking for the right job sometimes takes forever. Yes, I've been disappointed before. I've wanted jobs. There was one job specifically that I wanted. Um, Unfortunately, I was not selected for it. It was hard, but it was time to move forward, and probably something else better would come around. And that happened. So I was stuck with one specific job, really wanted to help students at a high school level. But I didn't know what was around the corner for me. And now I'm here. So with that being said, I think the most important thing is to always have a mindset that something better might be out there for you. Um, I think, yes, wanting a specific job is great, but you never know which field or area you'll fall under. In my case, I studied international business as undergrad, and now I am studying education and human development, more specifically international education, and incorporating international education perspective through K through 12. Don't know where that's going to lead me, but I am working in the education field, so we'll see what happens. I think having a positive mindset and thinking that even if you don't get a job, there's something better out there. I think that's the best way to think about it. And also, again, networking, having people around you. It could be a simple, I remember that I used to volunteer during the time that I was not working. During that 1 year and a half that I was at home, I would volunteer at the high school that I graduated from. And there I started making connections with teachers that I used to have, and teachers that were now new to the school. So always having those connections, making those connections, you never know where it's going to lead. And that's exactly what happened in this round with the new current job that I had. I was not looking for any jobs, and I was one of my connections reached out and was like, hey, there's a position that's open and I think you should apply. And it was hard to say no to a job that I really enjoyed before this, but also it was a great opportunity. So always have that in like as a mindset that something better might be around the corner.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marcos. So the things that stood out for me with what you said is that mindset matters. And coupled with that, that introspection is key, but also being retrospective is very, very important. And to get out there and use your resources by networking. And let us not forget the component of being a first generation college student, where sometimes the overthinking and the fear of rejection can kind of get in the way. So thank you all for sharing your stories. So to move through this process, we would want to open the floor up to all of our participants for questions. So you can unmute yourself, you can place your question in the chat. And if you don't have a question, just share some feedback or things that really resonate with you based on what you've heard. And we'll wait a couple of seconds. If you all don't have questions or feedback, Erin and I have some juicy questions to ask. The floor is open if anyone would like to offer a question or feedback. As you're warming up, has the information been shared so far been helpful? And you can react by putting a thumbs up or a heart. Thank you. Great. It's been helpful so far. Okay. Okay. Well, as you all are warming up, Karen, I want to come back to you on what you shared was you were making some bold moves, really bold moves, and you were creating your path in an area where it seemed like there wasn't a path. And so you were confident, right? And so there was something, you used a quote, I can't remember what it was, but I'm like, ooh, that's sassy. That's really nice. So my question for you is, where did you develop this confidence? And you talked about assessing yourself, assessing your strengths and your passion. And you had to have started somewhere. And so being able to give students kind of where you started and how you got to that place, I think may be helpful.
Well, that's a really great question. Because I distinctly remember feeling at that time that I was leaping outside of myself to do something really new. Because I'm an introvert, y'all. But what I've learned about myself over the years is, public facing, you wouldn't know that my tendencies are more as an introvert, because think about it, as a principal, I'm every woman, every person to everybody, right? I'm meeting all your needs. I'm your guy. I'm your woman. I'm your person. And so honestly, I think that the adrenaline or the anxiety of being at that moment in my life where, okay, grad school's ending, it's time for a job, really just pulled something more out of me to meet the moment. And what I decided to do is to lean back on what I did know. And I knew myself, I knew my desires and my strengths, as much as I lived with the healthy amount of self-doubt that all of us live with, I knew what I had to offer as well. And so I decided to grab that and play on that. And it paid off, I was as shocked as anybody, the way that it paid off. But over the years, and I've heard people say it in different ways, there are moments where you just have to take a leap. And it's usually outside of your comfort zone and outside of something that you would normally do. But my foundation was solid for something that I did know, and that was myself. So hopefully.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Sierra, thank you for your question. Sierra asked, would you all talk more about how you discussed pivoting to new spaces in your career, career in interviews? And anyone can take that question.
I can go ahead and start. I did not have that big of a pivot, but hopefully the advice is still helpful. So I was coming from very student-facing work. So I was doing student success coaching, academic advising. I was working with students every day. And in my current position, it's much more behind the scenes. It's more like data analysis, doing university retention. We work on like financial aid for first generation and limited income students. So it was very different in terms of the skill set. So something that I tried to do was just be very honest. My resume is my resume, and I think there are a lot of strengths in having a unique background, but also trying to tie it in with transferable skills. So being able to say, like, yes, I do not have a lot of experience with data, but here is a random task that I had in a job in the past that was related to data, and just being very transparent about it, because I think whatever you're bringing to the table is very unique, especially if you are trying to pivot, but you do also need to demonstrate how you could still be a good fit for this position. So kind of like having the balance of both of those things.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to tackle that question?
Sure, I'll add something to it. I think it's important, what was just said. Also, just being straightforward with what skills you have to offer. I think that's what's helped me all the time. It's okay, yes, I have not done this before, but this is what I bring to the table. This is what I can offer. And also, I personally would always do some research on the office that I'm applying for, just so that I know exactly some of the key points to talk about. I think another very important thing is to look at the job description and pull points from your job description. You should already be doing that on your cover letter, but also be ready to talk about them in your interview. And also one thing that I do interviews as well for positions in our office, and I think one thing that I appreciate is when a person has questions for me as well. And also a follow-up thank you is also great. But those are just small things that I feel like that would help you in the long run.
Well, thank you. Erin, do you have a few questions? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I have I guess a question that's kind of twofold. So each person here has talked about their mindset during the job search process before that job that was right around the corner eventually came to them. So I'm wondering, how do you change your mindset before you have any idea that that job is coming? Maybe you're navigating feelings of hopelessness. And then something else that you all mentioned was that the job that ended up being great for you wasn't always what you expected or anticipated or even hoped for. So I'm wondering, if the job that you ended up getting was very different, how did you navigate having to change your perspective or change your location? If any of you want to speak to any of those two questions.
Can I just make it a little juicier, add a little something on it? Okay. So Marcos, if you don't mind, right? So um if you would share the role that you had before becoming the assistant director of registration and records, right? So it's a leap, right? It's a jump from that to this. But what I heard or what I hear you saying is that you had a mindset that there was something more. There's something around the corner. And I'm not sure your thoughts or reasoning why you took the role before you took this one, but you took it, but you didn't stay there. Your mind was beyond where you were. So maybe that helps to kind of add to it.
Sure. Okay, so full disclosure, I know Aaron and Johnette because I worked with them prior to my current position. Um, and I was working with the graduate service team, um, where I oversaw about 10 CCAS programs. The reason why I decided to take that specific role was because I wanted a challenge. I wanted to challenge myself and work closer with students. So, my master's eventually, hopefully, I'm graduating in May, so yay. Um, my end goal has always been to work with students, um, specifically international students. In what capacity, I don't know yet. And I really did think that CCAS was the right choice for me at the time. And that is why I took that position because I wanted to have a more interactions with students. And I was fortunate enough to work with international students during that capacity. Um, Now I have to say, the new position that I'm currently in, the Assistant Director of Records and Registration, this actually came to me um, out of nowhere. I had applied before CCAS, I had applied for the law school in the same office, and I was rejected. And recently I found out why I was rejected. I was rejected because the hiring staff thought that it was not a good enough position for me. So they were actually waiting for another position to open up, which was this one. So once this one opened up, then I was called on and I was asked if I would like to apply. I do have to admit that I had to think about it because I really did enjoy working with international students and having that more front face position. But I also knew that I could make a difference here at the law school. Um, with also with the international students. So part of my job here at the law school, I'm in charge of all the final exams for every course that the law school offers, and I'm also in charge of reviewing all the academic records for LLM students, MSL students, and SJD students. The majority of these students are international students. So I'm still working with international students, just in a different capacity. With all this being said, the connections should always be there, right? That's the main reason why I was able to get this position was because of the connections I had made previously when I was in the records office, which was the office prior to CCAS. So all of that, at the end of the day, connections do help. Networking does help. It's just knowing the right people and continue applying. You never know, once you apply, you never know that, even if that position is not for you, you never know that they might be waiting for another position to open up and they might reach out to you. So I think it's always leaving an open door with any people that any job you apply to.
Beautiful. So I just want to highlight a couple of things before we go to Michael's question. That the big things that stood out for me in what you said, in addition to having connections and building relationships, is that there isn't necessarily a straight path to where you're going, right? You may have to be creative and do some things that you didn't expect that you would do, but you ultimately are doing what you want to do, but not in the same capacity. So be flexible. And the next thing is that, particularly as we overthink and am I good enough? They told you that the position you were applying for wasn't good enough for you. And so, I mean, that's powerful. And so sometimes we may get rejected for opportunities, not because we're not good enough, but because we're really good. And so it's an opportunity that really does not help to pull out, and it's not the best fit for us because we would be bored or our brilliance wouldn't shine or whatever the case may be. So it's not always that you lack anything. It's that you have an overabundance of something. And so that's a mindset shift within itself. Okay, and so we have Michael, and I think, Aaron, this might be our final question. Okay, So Michael says, how do you deal with the culture shock of a new academic and career field? I took a gap between my undergrad and grad school, but I jumped from cyber ops to security policy studies. Tis being a culture shock as to how much government pursuing folk need to hustle to even appear competitive. I've always been a career academic and I have yet to hold an actual job, but I cannot shake the feeling that I've started my pursuit of government work far too late. Anyone like to cover that?
You know, I had a thought when I read that. I don't know that I have the full answer for you, Michael, but what jumped out to me is the question, what is the through line? There's something in you in making that pivot, you know what you did, beforehand, and then moving to this new area of interest. So there's something in you that is the same, and that when you that you can bring it to show up in a new space and then use that through line to build your quote unquote hustle around. Do you know what I mean? I feel the culture shock even in how you wrote that in the chat, but I wonder if you can reflect on there and identify a through line between those two contexts and positions. I think that will give you a grounding where you can feel more confident and more empowered to show up in a way that not resonates. What's the word I'm looking for? Resonates, not resignates. Resonates in a way that resonates with the folks around you. That might be akin to that sort of competitive culture, to feel like you're in the running. So just a suggestion for you if that rings true for you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Well, everyone, we're at 1:00. Are there any final questions or comments before I turn it back over to Aaron to close?
I just want to add one more point for Michael. I think the most important thing is not to compare yourself to others. I recently was talking to someone who kind of has the same, I went through the same thing as you did in a sense, from international business to international education, completely different areas of expertise. And I actually took me a while to even apply for the graduated program. And I thought to myself, well, this is what I have to offer, and this is why I'm going to do it. I did get into the program, and that's why I'm here now. But I think comparing yourself to others isn't going to help. I was recently talking to a friend who is going through the same thing, and they're feeling that they shouldn't be in this program that they're currently in, and they keep comparing themselves to others. And I'm like, you shouldn't compare yourself to others, because at the end of the day, you know what you have to offer. And I think that's very important for you as well. Just don't compare yourself to others. You have something to offer, and that's the reason why you were admitted into this program.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. I think we have, okay, very good. To the panelists, thank you very much. To the participants, thank you so much for your presence and your engagement. So we are at the end of our conversation, and Aaron, I will turn it back over to you.
Sure. Yes, of course. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. And I just want to say I was so interested too in everything you all had to say. This is the kind of conversation that fills my cup. So yeah, really happy that you all could be here and everyone who attended in the audience could be here. So I also would like to ask, as I wrap up and give you some final closing information, for those of you who are in the audience, if you could just let us know if this conversation was helpful, and if yes, what was most helpful to you, so we know how we can continually improve our workshops and our programs moving forward. And I also want to share, if you thought this was helpful, these panelists They're just regular people. They're just like you. And so please see this as a future opportunity for you to share your experience, whether it's with job search anxiety or something else, to serve on a panel and give back in your future career as you grow in your careers as well. So let's see. So while folks are typing in the chat, I want to let everyone know again that this panel was recorded. So you will be receiving a follow-up email. Everyone who registered will receive a follow-up email with the full recording of this presentation. And folks who are in the Columbian College, you can always reach out to me or Johnette via our Columbian College email. So our email, I will drop it in the chat. It is ccas_careers@gwu.edu. And if you have any additional questions for our panelists that weren't addressed today, shoot us an email and we might be able to connect you with that person to ask your question directly. And with that, there is nothing else that I have to cover to conclude our session. Again, just really happy we could have this conversation. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.